قلبي اليمين لك يا مصر السلام.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight to be focusing on the development of Sinai. Engineer Hassan Shabaan, the political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. First of all, we did see the terrorist attacks that took place on Saturday, but what is next after eliminating terrorism in Sinai and in Egypt in general? How do you see the development of the Sinai Peninsula?
Sinai is the core, the heart of the whole Middle East. This is the whole issue. And once we annihilate terrorism, Egypt will have an excellent chance to put Sinai on the map as an economical free zone area to attract all banking activities and investments in the area. Once we come up with the new rules after annihilating the terrorist activities, I think most of the countries surround us will invest and have branches of their main banks in Sinai. Yes. Once you get this new Wall Street in Sinai, this will be stronger than the Bar-Leaf line that the Israelis built along the Suez Canal. Once you have this financial wall and have a lot of investments in Sinai, I think this automatically will make terrorist activities shrink, of course, with the mighty forces of the Egyptian army. Yes. And the protection of the Egyptian army. I think we are on the verge of scoring the final task. Of course, what happened yesterday was a trial from the terrorist groups to give a message to the Egyptians that we're still alive and we still can inflict casualties. But the nature of the attack was not against the army as such, it was against a project, a developing area that actually was near harvest, because this area became an agricultural area, and we are near the harvest season for the wheat that we actually grew in the area. Yes. And the lifting station that this group of army was protecting was just a station to irrigate the area where we grew wheat, actually. So I think the terrorist groups and the radical groups are very uptight because of the achievements that we made on land, on mainland or in Sinai. I think the message that they gave us yesterday, we understood it in a different way. This was an attack against civilization and development, and I think all the Egyptians feel the same way. Of course, we're paying a very dear price, you know, and this makes Sinai more dear to our hearts and add to the sacrifices that our fathers and brothers, you know, did in the past to get back Sinai to the homeland. I think the more we develop Sinai, the more we reduce the chances of radicalism and terrorist activities. We're going to have, of course, to utilize modern facilities to observe any hostile activities in the area. There is a lot of methods. I'm not a specialist in this field, but satellites are doing miracles right now. Any hostile movement should be noticed, and the army should react to it immediately before it actually develops. As I said, Sinai is a very promising area, and hopefully what happened yesterday will not give a negative impression to the investors to come and invest in Sinai.
Yes, exactly. How can we be drawing more investments, especially after the efforts that we have undertaken in terms of eliminating terrorism and eradicating terrorism in Egypt in general, and more specifically in Sinai, as we did see in the past years?
You see, still we have a weak point, which is the conflict or the case of Palestine. As long as you have instability across your border with Israel, and the friction between Hamas and Israel, you will always have the possibility of leakage across the border, in spite of the fact that you managed to destroy a lot of tunnels and so forth. But still, what happened yesterday gives us an indication that these activities most probably have support from across the borders. So we're going to have to watch this very carefully, because if we want to attract investors, we're going to have to provide them with security, and Sinai should be a very peaceful place. And this is very close to happen, to be honest with you, but hopefully what happened yesterday is an alert to our army that the battle is not over yet. Everybody might get the impression that we might, finalize the terrorist activities in Jabal Halal and so forth, and all of these areas. But I think we're going to have a final showdown in Sinai.
What are the other sectors that could be developed in Sinai? Because you mentioned that this could be the new Wall Street. Banking could be developed in Sinai. So what are the other sectors that could be developed simultaneously?
Actually, there is some spots in Sinai that actually speaks for itself, like the Bardawil Lake area. This is a very promising area, and I think with some development and scientific studies, the Bardawil Lake could be turned to the biggest fish farm in the area, because during the Israeli occupation, the Bardawil Lake was a main provider for very special fish to the the Paris market. Yes. Every morning there was a flight that flies from Sinai to Paris, exporting fish, Egyptian Bardawil fish, to Paris fish market. So I think we could do all of this. We require to encourage fishermen. We need to give the area the facilities to be able to do the same thing. I'm sure that everybody knows how did this thing happen when we used to export the fish to Paris.
Yes.
But again, Sinai is a good place to produce salt. There is a number of spots in Sinai where you actually could manufacture salt. Well, I'm not talking about table salt only. Salt is a very special material, and it looks like oil. I mean, you could break this material to a number of sub-products. You could get bromine, for instance, out of this salt. Once you start producing salt, the bromine is a material that goes into tranquilizer industries in medicine, and very few countries in the whole world produce this material. Also, you know, during the production of salt, you get a very small one-cell animal or fish actually that lives in this very salty water called the artemia, which is like caviar. And, you know, we could sell this artemia to countries like Japan. They're very, it's a very popular thing in Japan. It's very expensive. In winter time, salt is very much required in a lot of countries, in Scandinavian countries especially, and in Europe generally speaking, to use it, and we call it dirty salt, which is untreated salt. We used to export this salt to Europe with big quantities, and I think we still have the chance to do the same. We have the sun and the soil that allows us to produce massive amounts of salt. With very little effort, we could have a factory that actually produces, you know, certain cosmetics out of the salt. We need a whole chain of ideas to serve one another, and you know, this in the end will lead to a very prosperous Sinai. You have to consider that Sinai looks over the Mediterranean from one side and the Red Sea from the other side. Of course, you have the tourism in Sharm el-Sheikh, and of course you have these beside the tourism, you have the diving activities and so forth, and you have the Suez Canal on one side. So you need a very thorough study to be able to combine all this to make a boom takes place in Sinai.
We have the sun in Sinai as well. It is good for tourism in Sharm el-Sheikh in different parts of Sinai. By the solar power, how can it be generated and produced, and how can it be used in Sinai?
We could have a huge solar farm in Sinai. We have the mountains, and we have you know, the land to have a solar farm where we can use the energy, the clean energy that is produced from these solar farms locally in Sinai or in Egypt, generally speaking, or exported to other countries. So, or use it in industry, by the way. So, Sinai is a very precious jewel in the area, and I think all of what's happening is to abort all the ambitious plans and programs that the government is having to develop Sinai. This war is against the development of Egypt. It's not aimed to the army, it's aimed to the Egyptian people, to prevent them from reaching a point where they actually have the fruit is close to being ripe, and somebody is trying to burn the tree that carries the fruit.
Yes. How do you see the efforts of development in Sinai by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the political leadership, especially ever since 2014? Do you believe that there is a leap in development, funding, in terms of funding, billions of pounds and dollars being pumped in there?
Definitely. The two tunnels under the Suez Canal actually are carrying the water to Sinai. And this is where actually the terrorist activities try to take place actually. The water carried by these tunnels are utilized for agriculture actually. And the lifting, the uplifting station that the terrorist groups were trying to destroy is one of the projects, the successful projects that we managed to establish in Sinai after the year 2014. So actually, we're going to have to realize that we have a president that accepted the challenge, and I think from what we see on the ground, he is very capable of carrying this project, annihilating terrorists from Sinai once and for all.
And development as well, on the other hand.
Well, development is the big reward in the end. If we manage to secure Sinai, and turn it to an attractive place for investments, I think this automatically will take place.
You've mentioned the tunnels of having water from different parts of Egypt going to Sinai, but the tunnels of like Ahmed Hamdi, for example, Ahmed Hamdi to the other Sinai tunnels coming from different governorates like Ismailia, Sharqiya, Port Said to Sinai. What is the importance of having those tunnels leading from different parts of Egypt and the Delta to Sinai, transferring people?
A lot of people do not have the imagination to go back like a century and a half ago, where the Suez Canal was not there. Sinai was part of Egypt, and a lot of people get the impression that the Suez Canal actually divided or actually put Sinai apart from Egypt. No, these tunnels that you are talking about is the ties, the ropes that ties Sinai to the motherland. Indeed, we have the Suez Canal, but again, we are tying Sinai to the motherland with these tunnels and making transportation real easy between the motherland and Sinai.
Yes, and finally, how do you see development in general in Egypt nowadays, especially after the coronavirus pandemic and the tensions that are going on in Europe between Russia and Ukraine?
Amazingly, the war between Russia and the Ukrainians only affected prices and so forth. But again, what happened during the pandemic is happening again during this war. The government is very stable and capable of facing all these expected problems. What's happening on the ground in Egypt is really very similar to what happened in Egypt 150 years ago, the boom, the renaissance of Egypt. We're coming back, and I think indeed we might have a lot of loans, but this is a tough way, and we're going to have to cross it in order for us to rebuild our country. I think the coming era will deal with industrializing the country, and this marriage between industry and agriculture is properly taking place, and we will see a completely different Egypt within the next 5 years.
Yes, exactly. Engineer Hassan Shabaan, the political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.